Good morning. Happy Wednesday. So I'm going to come out here first. I'm going to give you a little bit more of my book. And then maybe later today I'll come on and get a reading out to you guys. But yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite chapters of it. But my beautiful soul of a son. A beautiful soul that stole mine right from the start. He came into this world during a period of upheaval that we would later find out to be our government turning on its people. The sadness, grief, and sorrow that I was feeling those last 4 days of pregnancy will never leave me. He was to be born on the 7th and didn't make an appearance until the 15th. On his terms always, and always has been. I watched in horror on the TV that morning while working from home, the towers in New York City being destroyed. I thought to myself, how was I to raise a child in a world of such destruction and be able to keep him safe from harm? It seemed a very daunting task at the time, and I can remember crying for days as a very pregnant and overdue woman. The emotions that you have during pregnancy is hard enough, let alone add a tragedy that took so many lives of innocent people. The morning I went into labor was exceedingly early. It was about 4 a.m. and I had been sleeping on the couch or in a recliner for weeks. I had the severe pain starting and knew it was a 40-minute drive to Milwaukee to reach the hospital that I would deliver my son. I woke baby daddy number 1 and we left right away. Every bump and hole in the road that day seemed to want to remind me just how painful this was going to be. We arrived at the hospital and I was swiftly put into a room. You think it will go quickly, but as most first babies, they take their time, and with the epidural that I was given, it would slow down the contractions. I was in labor for a total of about 16 hours. Not the worst, but the epidural slowed down the contractions. By the time I delivered him, I was in despair as I would go to push him out and he would retract back in. They had to use forceps to get him moving. They kept putting an oxygen mask on me and I kept ripping it off. It tasted like plastic. And I did not want it. The doctor finally told them to let her have her way. When he came out, he had the cord around his neck, but as a tie, and it was not hurting him. His struggle started right from the beginning. I believe he was a soul that fought coming here, and in the end, he had to come. He was a healthy 7 pounds and 10 ounces, 21 inches long, and lungs that we knew he was here. As mentioned previously, my body did not respond well, and I got the shakes very bad. My body had gone into shock. 1 second, I gotta plug in my apparently my computer is running out of juice. My body had gone into shock. It is hard to explain when I had never had anything like it before. By then, what the hell? I had somebody totally doesn't want me to get this out today, but fuck off, okay? Just fuck off. As mentioned, my body had gone into shock. It is hard to explain when I had never had anything like it before. By then, I had 13 people in the room, doctor and nurse for me, doctor and nurse for my son, students, emergency personnel, and goodness knows who else. He was a beautiful baby, even with the bruising from the forceps. I took one look and knew that from now on, I would have to be everything to him. I played Creed in the background while giving birth, and the song, with arms wide open, would be his. And that is posted in here as well. 1 second. This song would take on new meaning every time I played it. I took my son home to a place that no longer felt like home. It did not have the same welcoming energy, and to be truthful, it hadn't really ever been. I again was just trying to make things work because of decisions I had made, thinking I had to stick to them. I was making everyone else happy but me. It was time to change that. Little did I know at the time that I would be moving where my mental health would still be challenged. My mom's household was full of individuals that had not left home yet, and I would stay for about 8 months, long enough to get myself together, find a new job, and look for a place to live. During this time, history would repeat itself as I would become pregnant with my second child while living with my mom, just as she did when living with my grandparents when we moved home from California. I was grateful for the place to stay with my child, but also knew the household was not good for my mental health. After the brief stay at my mom's crazy household, I had a place of my own for my kids, and I was about 4 months pregnant when I moved into my 2-bedroom apartment, finally on my own again with 1.5 children to raise. My son would thrive even though there was a lot of discord between his father and I. He did everything he could to disparage me, my life, and try to make me out to be a bad mother for the next 20 years. My son had an infectious happiness about him, exploring and learning that the world was his to discover. He was so excited by my ever-growing belly and would hug it and call it my baby. It truly was a magical time for me with him. I knew things would change soon, and I soaked up all the one-on-one time I had with him, not really paying any attention to anything else. We did have one scare with him when he was about 15 months old. He had received his second MMR vaccination and broke out in the virus from head to toe. We spent many days at home trying to get over this, and I was 7 months pregnant at the time. They were worried I would get it and pass it to the baby. I had never had chickenpox as a child, or my system was immune to it. I luckily never got sick, but little did I know at the time that this would be training for an illness that would hit him later in life that he would almost not survive. Life would move along as most do, and would explore his world to learn so many things. The court battles would silence for a while, but then rear its ugly head now and again. I would try and protect him the best I knew how and never talk about his father in front of him. I have never found that to be a productive thing that parents choose to do. I had chosen this individual, and they will forever be their parent. Your relationship with your child has nothing to do with how you feel about the other parent. My son always had a natural ability for any type of sport, anything with a ball. He could play and well. He eventually took up bicycles and BMX biking, to be specific. He would excel in this area of his life. It was a favorite pastime for him and his friends. Luckily, one of his friends worked at a bicycle shop. He would spend a lot of time there and spent quite a bit of my money. The lengthy court battle with baby daddy number one, things to quiet for a while, and that was due to me signing court papers when he was 5 that he did not have to pay child support, even though he only had one night a week and every other weekend. I was making enough that I did not care. This would come back to bite me in the ass when I ended up having to pay child support when he turned 10 and until he turned 18. I just paid this balance off not long ago. To say money was the only reason baby daddy number one seemed to exist is all I believe to this date. He had done the same shenanigans to baby mama number one. Definitely a pattern in his life that I believe stemmed from unresolved mother issues that he hopefully forgave when she died. I believe him to be a struggling soul that has never taken a good look at himself to see what he truly needed from himself versus others. Life would take a turn again when I met contract number 2. I would then think this is the one. He felt right and was attentive. This, of course, would cause major problems with baby daddy number 1 and number 2. They knew now I had someone on my side. It would cause havoc for all of us. My son would continue to thrive despite the ongoing issues caused by his father. He would come back from his dad's and be so wound tight that it would take days for his nervous system to calm down and come back to a place where he felt safe. Little did I know about the abuse that was going on in the household. I suspected something in my gut which I should have listened to better, but could not prove anything. It would not be until my son was 16 that he would come to live with me full-time again. We had gone back to court when I was in the hospital for my depression, and baby daddy number 1 was granted primary placement. The system truly is about money and nothing else. I had an investigation take place when he was about 12 years old. Even his older sister was questioned, and the Hartford Police Department decided that they couldn't prove anything, even though my son had bruises on his body almost everywhere. Pictures were taken and nothing came of this. This battle would ensure for almost 3 years. When my son called me that day crying to say that his dad didn't want him anymore, I thought I was hearing things. The extent of his dad's undiagnosed mental disorder had finally cracked. He had tried for the last time to try and put hands on my son. This time he did not take it and fought back and took him down. His dad in turn bit him so hard in his pinky finger that he eventually lost that fingernail completely. It still makes me so sad. I went with a friend and called to the Hartford Police Department to document what was happening due to the fact that I knew the games and lies that he would use against me. The police officer met me there, and it was a smoother transition of getting my son. Now, mind you, it had been 6 years since my son had lived with me full-time and about 1.5 years since I had seen him due to taking a job out of state. We enjoyed a summer together, getting to know each other again. It did not take long. He has such a beautiful heart, and he knew he would be safe with me. It was right around school time that baby daddy number 1 tried to come back and tell him that he needed to come home after no contact all summer. Contacted the police department and a temporary restraining order put in place until we could get in front of a judge. That following week, we were in Children's Court in Milwaukee County, and we finally had a day in court to prove the abuse that went on. I was in tears the majority of the time, having to hear my son talk about the years of abuse that he had endured. It was only compacted by my own memories of abuse in my childhood from my stepdad. The officer in the court had to bring me tissues and ask me if I was going to be okay to proceed. I had to ask my son questions as if I was his attorney. One of the hardest days of my life. I had a hard time trying to forgive myself for not doing something sooner. But the truth is, when dealing with a narcissist, you will always look like the bad parent until you get someone who truly hears the truth. Luckily, this judge did, and she granted me the injunction until he was 18. Finally, I felt like we could breathe after 16 years of continuous harassment and judgment from baby daddy number one in a court system in Washington County that did not want to see the truth, even after an investigation by CPS when I was living in South Carolina. The final decision stated that the father does not seem to have his son's best interest in mind and is not empathetic to his child's experiences. He does not seem to really care if he is mean to his child and appears to have a just generally distorted view of his role as a parent. The conflictual relationship between parties is a stress coupled with the father's immature and irresponsible parenting style. This father is assessed to be very rigid and controlling in his parenting and lacks the ability to demonstrate self-control when it comes to disciplining his son's behaviors because he feels entitled to that control. This plays out to where he lashes out physically to gain control of a situation. This condition is assessed to be out of control and is embedded in the father's belief system. But this reporter finishes the report to state that no danger. Threats were identified as the observable condition does not cross the danger threshold. Dated 9/22/16. My son would come to live with me on 6/19/18. Almost 2 years after this investigation was done, and I had to take it to a different county for it to be seen. Mind you, this investigation was started by a detective at the Hartford Police Department due to his father smashing the phone I bought my son and sawing his BM bikes in half. How possibly did this county not do something at this time? This was while I was in South Carolina for work. The detective and I were both baffled. I almost lost my mind and was the reason I moved back to Wisconsin. My son was not safe. So life moves on, and we get into a rhythm that seems to work for us. Money was tight, but we were making, so I thought, until life would present another life lesson to us both. My son would become very ill. He was first diagnosed with sports-induced asthma by a clinic doctor. We were told to schedule a follow-up with his doctor. We went to the appointment, and they took his blood pressure and oxygen levels. We were immediately told he would be transported to Children's Hospital and that he needed immediate attention due to the low level of oxygen he was receiving in his body. Holy shit, what was happening? I had noticed him losing weight, and we thought we were doing the right thing according to the last doctor that he had seen. So now we are in the ambulance on our way to the hospital. When I say they ran every test you could possibly think of and more, I am not kidding. My son was a complete science anomaly to this hospital. No one had a clue what was going on with him. I was asked to step out of the room numerous times so they could ask questions about what my son was taking and what it was. He had no drugs in his system of any kind. It was a complete puzzle that no one knew even where to start. He was admitted, and this would be the start of a 3-week stay that I would almost surely lose my mind. I just kept wondering, why do these things keep happening to us? We had just finished things with baby daddy number one, and we're living a more peaceful life. We would encounter many doctors, many tests, many nights for me of crying in the bathroom at night while he slept. Nothing was happening. It was around day 8 that I finally lost it and told the 15 or so people that were in his room to get the fuck out and not come back until they had some answers for us. My son was turning grayer by the day, and I was not pleased at the no answers that we were getting. I understand that they had never seen anything like this before, but this mama bear had taken all she could, and her patience had run out. Either do something, or I will have him moved to a hospital where they will do something. While I made my trips home to cook for him, I would be researching with hospitals across the nation and experts that would eventually help them get the right answers. The learning curve for me was tremendous, but also something I loved to do, as I felt like I was helping in some sort of way. My son needed me, and I wanted to provide answers too. I asked more questions than I can even remember, and did not want to go to bed at night until I knew we were doing everything possible for him. It was the next day, after I told the medical team to get out of his room, that they came back with 2 surgical procedures that they were going to do, hoping the first would provide answers, and if not, the second to go further and get a piece of his lung to evaluate. Unfortunately, he did have to have the 2 procedures. The second was something that I would never want to see someone have to go through again. The amount of pain that he was in, even on pain medication, was incredible. Having to be strong and not cry in front of him was hard for me. I would stay with him during the post-op days and not leave at all. He was looking better and breathing better after they started him on liquid prednisone. Very powerful, but effective drug. They were seeing good results and happy with the progress that he was making. My stress was starting to come down and was more reassured that we were through the worst of it. My son had been probably 10 days away from death. I am thankful that I did not know this at the time. As he was making good progress, we were assured he would probably be able to go home within a week, but we would have to quarantine to make sure his lungs would not be compromised again. Basically, we were quarantining 8 months prior to the world quarantine. Little did I know at the time that we were basically learning how to quarantine effectively and would be experts by the time the rest of the world had to join us. Over the course of the next 2 years, we would have another short stay in the hospital for about 5 days to adjust his meds, and then maybe many follow-up visits, tests, etc. My son became a study for the Medical College of Wisconsin and is still a part of it today. I did not stop going to visits with him until about his 21st birthday. This entire experience for him and I was a learning lesson, not only about the sickness, but the depression that would follow for my son, and me being nervously aware of my inner fear of what happens next. It is no way to live in constant fear. I knew from my own depressive experience that I could only give him the tools and that he needed to do the work for himself. Luckily, he had video gaming and his beautiful cats to get him through his worst days, but it would be a long road to him feeling like himself again. During this time, he had absolutely no contact with his father, as there was still a restraining order in place. Come to find out that baby daddy number 1 had canceled my son's insurance through his employer, and my son had no coverage since February of that year. It was now June, and no one was made aware of this change. I was also paying $50 toward this insurance monthly in my child support. I had to apply for state insurance, as we were currently looking at about $350,000 in medical bills. This did not include anything going forward. Thankfully, the state came through and paid the majority of it. This would have broken me financially, especially as I still had to take baby daddy number 1 back to court to get the child support stopped that I was paying to him while my son was living with me full time. This is how ridiculous our child support system in Wisconsin currently is. I believe all support should have stopped when I had proof that he lived with me, and secondly, we had a restraining order in place. But Washington County does not work that way. Another book for another time. My son started to get better over time. He got a job at UPS and has done an excellent job in getting his life back on track. He has been through some rough times in his life at an early age, but like myself, I believe it can only help to grow, become a better human to others, and recognize what he is not willing to put up with in his life. To say that he has changed my life in more ways than not is an understatement. His strength and tenacity to overcome these challenges and still be a nice person to the majority of the people that he comes in contact with is an example of the character that he has developed over time. I can only hope that he recognizes that I am always here for him and love him, no matter if I am upset with him or not. Our children sometimes forget that we are human too, and just trying to get through this thing called life, and show them what not to do, because we have already tried it. It is a balance of knowing what is right and wrong and making choices for yourself. Your choices, your consequences, or joys, as I always say. Life is up to you, and my son would definitely show the world that he would not quit even though it had tried several times to stop him. He has grown into a man that I am proud to say is my son, and has the kindness, heartfelt center, and strength to show the world that I am proud to say is my son, and has the kindness to show others that he is not a quitter, but also the tenacity to move through the hardships life presents to us, and not be a bitter or self-sabotaging because of it. God has surely blessed me with this soul.